especially for doing this series, chief of staff can often be a very confusing role, but it's an essential role for a lot of organizations. So what I personally do is, when it comes to chief of staff, the aim is basically very simple. The aim is to be the person who is doing the time management, making sure that the decision making process is effective, that the information flow is effective. Okay, these are the three pillars on which we operate. And the objective is to kind of free up bandwidth for the CXO that you're supporting, so that she or he is able to focus on a few other more business things. So that's the core objective. And every chief of staff will have a very different kind of KRAs, or their day-to-day is going to be very different. And it depends on the maturity of the organization and what is the need of the CXO who is actually creating this role. It's very dependent on what exactly is a company's requirements.
So if you have to run us through a typical day at PayU, how would it be like for you?
Okay, so for me, I'm personally from the background of finance and strategy.
Oh.
Okay, so therefore, when I look at my chief of staff role, I kind of align myself to those expertise of mine. Okay, but all said and done, chief of staff is also a role which will give you a lot of different exposures. So if I have to talk about my day, a typical day as a chief of staff, it would be, you have to attend a lot of meetings, these management meetings, and actually that's the highlight of the job. You get an exposure to everything that's happening in the organization from the perspective of business, from the perspective of people. That's one part of it. Then the second part of it is basically managing people. It's an individual contributor role, but I need to work with a lot of different teams and a lot of different stakeholders to get the work done. So that kind of interaction forms a major chunk of my day, like almost 20 to 30% of my time goes in that. Okay. And then for me, the third bucket is basically finance and strategy. I actually have two hats at my company. One is the finance part and the other is the chief of staff. So I anyways have to keep doing this, being this person who provides analytics, who provides financial information, stays on top of the numbers and all of those things. So that is obviously a very important part of the job. But then, like I said, it depends highly on what your company and your leader needs. So for instance, in my case, I got a chance to run the diversity and inclusion piece for PayU. So that's another thing that I work at. So there are like different aspects. And if you see it ranges from business to people, and this wide spectrum is what makes chief of staff a fun role.
Oh, very exciting. And, come to think of it, there must be skill sets and experiences that you've picked along the way that has prepared you for this role. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your early life and career, and how has those roles and times that you've spent in different organizations or doing different things, maybe your education background, how has all of it kind of come together for you to deliver on this, extremely challenging cross-functional expertise at the same time, that generalist idea that this role has. How has it prepared you for it?
Definitely. So I have led my life by the rule of eliminations. I am an engineer by background, like a lot of us. But
no,
then
not me. I'm not an engineer.
Right, I know. But yes, I spent like 4 years doing engineering, but immediately after college, I switched my fields into finance. I entered derivatives trading. I did that for 2 years. Trust me, it was my first exposure to markets and first exposure to the world of finance. But I fell in love with it. So then I did my MBA. I worked at an investment bank for 2 years. I was with Goldman Sachs. And then I moved to PayU, and PayU I joined like 3 years back. How this helps me is that engineering or maybe even trading or finance, all of this really helps you get on top of, analytical thinking, just being very comfortable with numbers, and in general, having to take a step back and looking at the macro view of things, looking at the bigger picture. Like for instance, when we were at investment banking, every deal will be a different deal, and every company is going to be a different company. You need to understand the business model of the company before you actually go into doing anything, right? So that business perspective comes in very handy, and that's what is needed, right? You need to be able to zoom out and look at the 30,000 view of things. Yeah, that's definitely one. And the second probably thing would be just being able to get into new things, uncharted territory, just having
Mm.
being comfortable with uncertainty is extremely important.
These are all
So
entrepreneurial
probably
traits.
these are two things. It is very similar to that, Rohit, because when I was thinking about it, I realized that, chief of staff is such a vague role. There is no definition attached to it. You need to so often step back and actually define it for yourself, right? It's a
Right.
constant reinvention of what you want to do, which is very similar to what an entrepreneur would have to do in his or her business. So, yeah, you're
Absolutely.
right.
Tell me something about managing people around you. Because you work so
Hmm.
closely with the CEO, I'm sure there is that aura of influence. Um, and that might create at times difficulties for you, when it comes to communicating, especially with somebody who is much senior to you in the organization. So how does that happen? How do you get into that process of explaining the common vision, agenda, or strategy to somebody who is,
Hmm.
way up the ranks and still make sure we're all moving in the right direction?
Yeah, that's probably the toughest thing, and you've caught it right on. Like I said, it's an individual contributor role more often than not. Like, or at best, you will have like a couple of people supporting you. So, but you have to get these cross-functional things executed, which means that you're actually trying to influence people who don't necessarily report to you, or like you said, are often are very senior to you. So what I have realized, what helps for me, what for me is, one thing is just building trust.
Hmm.
Even though you're a chief of staff for one individual CEO, but you have to work with his team, with his set of CXOs, right? So until unless you have a certain set of understanding, certain set of trust with those people as well, it's very tough for you to do the job. And that trust building can come through different means. It can come through having multiple touch points, or assisting in some sort of a help that whenever any of these people need. So that trust building exercise is probably the first thing that one should do. And the second thing is, just be open to asking for help. Just be very honest that you need help in something, and just go ahead and ask. Most of the times people will help you, and that also helps in building like a relationship, which is crucial.
Hmm. Interesting. Also, as I was researching on this role, I just, typed the phrase chief of staff in LinkedIn just to see what kind of roles are coming up. And I
Hmm.
see almost every major tech startup today is asking to recruit one. Um, Not sure how exactly they want to use them, but uh, because the reason why I asked this is a lot of them are asking for people with like 1 year of experience. I'm not sure how people
Okay.
with little background or context of business will do in this role. So if you were recruiting, right, what would be the traits, skills? Otherwise, out of
Hmm.
if that guy does not come with a long history of experience like you, how do you evaluate that person for the role?
um, you know what, before recruiting, one needs to understand if, do you even have a need for it, right? And there are like a set of questions that one needs to ask themselves before actually getting into recruitment. Do you feel like you are spending way more time on firefighting, or do you feel like you're not being able to spend time on your long-term vision? or if you're actually willing to take feedback from someone who is junior to you, only when the answer to these three questions are a yes, that you should go into recruiting someone. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it, as to what I will look for when I'm recruiting someone who doesn't come with the same background, is just the aptitude of being able to understand the business. So like when I say that, I am not looking for someone with a particular set of experiences, I'm not looking for someone who is, say, coming only from consulting, or coming only from investment banking, or coming only from marketing or anything. Any function would do,
because
because
that
at the end,
because that's how generally most of the roles are putting out their experience requirements. It's either somebody from a strategy consulting background, or investment banking like you.
yeah.
So it's so very well defined, and you're telling me that's not a requirement.
Yeah, I know I'm giving up a contrarian opinion here, but I think the reason why people put up these roles is the skill of business savviness,
Right.
understand business. That is a core thing when you are a strategy consultant. You have done management consulting, right? So you're fully aware of it.
True.
That comes from bread and butter. So that's why it's like an easy tick. As to if I am hiring a consultant, probably I'll get this definitely. So, but what I still believe is you should pick up people with, be it marketing, be it operations, be it strategy. You should pick up people who have a proven track record of expertise in their domain. That's one. And the second thing is, like even if there's an operations person who has the ability to see the business impact of his or her actions, I think if that is there, I am not going to be stuck upon a particular kind of an experience. Yeah.
Interesting. And tell me about managing your losses. How do you hedge your losses? Because you can't make too many mistakes when it comes to this role. It's very strategic. How do you ensure mistakes don't happen? A, and B, if they do, how do you firefight?
Mistakes will always happen. Human error as a term, you can't let it go, right? It is always going to happen. But when that
But you're
happens,
like right there. You're in the front lines.
I know, but you can't help it, right? If you just strive for that 100%, like all you can do is make sure that you check things, you recheck things, you consult with the right people, but you will always make mistakes. Trying for that utopian situation is not gonna happen. So might as well accept it. And when you make a mistake, make sure you accept it faster than anything else. Inform the people involved that what, this is probably something that has gone wrong, and let's fight it out, rather than trying anything else. So mistakes will happen. What is important is just accepting it right away and firefighting it out, and be honest. Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody understands that people make mistakes, so it's fine.
Interesting. From a candidate's perspective, if there is somebody who aspires to be in this role, and he does not have the relevant skill set or background yet, how should he proceed, constructing or uh, creating his own career so he can land a role as a chief of staff in a startup?
That's a very interesting question, and a very tough one, actually. um, if I have to approach such a situation, first thing that I will do is I'm gonna have to look up the startups that interest me. Okay, find out the startups that interest you. Make a business model, make a business case. Don't send a usual resume to that person, because you don't have that kind of an experience to actually vouch for your abilities, right? So build a business case. Probably it can be, let's assume there is a B2C startup which is planning to expand geographically, and you've learned that through reading about the company. Build a business case for them. Build a go-to-market strategy for them. Reach out to the founder on a LinkedIn with this business case, so that then that person has something to judge you upon. You can't just share a resume, right? So you will have to put in that extra effort to show that you have the skills that are required to be the second-hand person for that CEO, right? Because when a startup is looking for a chief of staff, they want a hustler. They want an executioner, someone who can get things done. So you need to show that aptitude outright in front of the founder. And I'm sure the founder will appreciate the effort that you've put in. And that will give you at least the first conversation opportunity.
Absolutely true. I think I resonate and fully believe what you just said. Speaking of, kind of portraying what you do and how you do it, tell me something. Um I have now looked at closely about 100 profiles of different chief of staffs across companies,
Oh,
and
wow.
I see a mixed bag of people, right? But one thing
Yeah.
that cuts across all of them is almost 90% of them have an MBA degree, right? Now, in a world when this business program is slowly losing relevance, because everything that is taught in those big bulky rooms and institutions is now available online, and you can do all sorts of internships to learn skills, pick those young. What is the
Yeah.
role of having an MBA today? uh, do you think it's a must have to be in this role or any other strategically important role in an organization?
And I'm again going to put a contrarian opinion, because 90% of such roles are held by MBAs. I'm myself an MBA, but I am a strong believer that this is not like a must have. What is a must have is an experience, is professional experience. So, like, there is no replacement or there is no shortcut to having that experience if you want to land this job. You need to know something, some function of a business needs to be your expertise. Then you can land this job, and MBA is not a must have. Things will change. uh, these MBAs and brand name titles are, why do companies look for such things, right? Because you're just assuming that a few skills will be like default, and then that judgment process becomes easy. But again, to reiterate, MBA is not a must have for this role. The must have is a professional experience.
Yeah, that's like one level of filter already done for you as an organization, if I think from that side.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me, Anuradha, what
Yeah.
you.
I mean, that's what, right? It is, sorry. From an organization's perspective, it's a good way to filter. But then like like we discussed about how you approach a startup, you can cut through this, this filtering route. So, something to think about.
Awesome. Tell me, Anuradha, how do you, um, you know, mm, how do I put it? How do you make sure that what kind of soft skills? I mean, what kind of soft skills do I need to have in me if I have to do this role really well? Because you tell me you have to talk to a lot of people, so clearly communication skills clearly stand out. Your ability to empathize maybe with your seniors because you have to constantly put yourself in the shoes of other people.
Yeah.
Three, also holding back your opinion. Do you think that's important sometimes?
No, I don't think so. It's actually the opposite.
Oh,
Because what happens, working with very senior people, right? People who are much older than you, people who are much more experienced than you. Then being able to express your opinion is a more important thing than holding on to them.
oh,
Because of whatever is the, the tension in the room, or just the fact that, you're worried about the hierarchy of things, automatically you'll hold on to a lot of opinions and not really express it.
right.
What you need to get out of is expressing your opinion, saying what you want to say. And trust me, a CEO also wants his chief of staff to kind of uh, be the ear on the ground, right? Tell her or him what the realities are, things that he's probably not aware of. So, and that's how you will build a rapport with the CEO. The role needs to have a good relationship between the chief of staff and the CEO. So until unless you have the comfort of saying your opinions, you won't be able to do that. So the opposite, actually.
Interesting. And that brings me to the next question, which is who should not apply for this role?
who should not apply for this role? That's a interesting one. I'm just thinking. Probably people who are not comfortable with uncertainty, like
Mm,
people who require a structure or instructions, should not. Because
very
like I
nice.
said, the aim is to reduce the time that the CEO is spending on smaller things, right? So if
Right.
she needs to give you the instructions, then the purpose is being defeated. You should be perfectly fine being the go-getter, being proactive, not having any rule book to play with.
Mm. And what is the most difficult part of your job? I feel you are very passionate about what you do. So I'm sure there must be, your low days when things aren't really
Of
going well for you.
course.
So what are those challenges? What do they look like? And what's like the most difficult thing to do in everything that you do?
Well, the most difficult thing to do is, I think we touched upon it a couple of times already, just being able to influence people without having any authority, it can get really challenging. And that is sometimes low. You sometimes feel that, are you doing enough? That question will keep popping up. Working that out is very important. And that's when talking to people across the organization really helps. um, that's one. And the second thing is, probably like I said, the role is uncertain. You will have moments when you feel like you're not doing enough, you're not contributing enough. So finding your niche, finding things that excite you and taking it up end to end would really help. So definitely, like, just fight out that uncertainty, fight out that doubt, which is, I think, true for almost all roles, but it happens way too often in this role.
Now, so now I assume going, working from home all of a sudden must have had a big impact on your job role per se. Can you tell me a little bit about, how the last couple of months have been for you and how's the team coped up with this new reality?
Fortunately for us, the I think we have been able to manage the entire lockdown and the entire work from home pretty well, because, like, PayU is a technology company, so we are not really dependent on being physically in one place. So that helps, and we started acting and preparing for this kind of a situation much before the actual lockdown was imposed. So that really helped us to keep the engine running. That's from an organization perspective. From my perspective, you know what, Rohit, I have worked with bosses who are not in the same country, who are not in the same city forever. Like, that has been my story forever. uh, my CEO is in London. uh, my CFO, with whom I work for finance, is in Dubai. So we work across all time zones. So I think that just means that it was not as difficult. What was difficult is the fact that earlier in office I could just go up to anyone and just go and talk. Now I can't do that. It will have to be like a phone conversation. And a lot of things that I used to learn about the pulse of the company used to be when you're going to get a coffee and you bump into someone and you're having that informal conversation. So now those kind of conversations are not possible. So that's the kind of challenge that we face. But yeah, I'm not complaining about work from home. I live in Delhi. I commute, like, I used to commute 3 hours. So this has given me like some new hours have just jumped out of my schedule, and I have zero complaints.
Do you think this is something which is going to now continue as part of a core strategy to have this balance between letting people work from home and at the same time keeping your offices lean? Do you see that future happening for us now?
I hope so. That's my wish, actually. I'm a strong believer of work
Is
from
there
home.
a discussion like this at PayU?
Well, that's something that I can't really comment on. But as in my personal capacity, if you ask my opinion, I am a strong believer of work from home. Reason being, I know that it leads to a lot of anxiety and stuff like that. But we need to keep in mind that we're talking about a situation where we can't even meet friends at the moment. Once those things turn back to normal, a lot of that anxiety will actually come under control. And
Right.
work from home frees up people's time, allows people to spend a lot more time with their family. The stress of commuting in traffic, managing those things, I think it's a way to even manage your work life. In addition to, obviously companies will have lower expenses and stuff like that. But as an employee, I think it just helps manage work life a lot better.
Awesome.
So my fingers are crossed that companies think about it positively and that taboo of work from home breaks.
Yeah, but there's also research coming now from the US. I don't remember which university, but they say on average, post the lockdown across the world, work hours have
Yeah.
increased by almost an hour and a half, varying degrees across the country.
Mm.
So now those demarcations are also over. And I was speaking to somebody
Correct.
very close to me, a guy who works for one of the largest, fastest growing payment startups in India, and he was telling me, uh, dude, my Sundays are gone. So how does an organization keep that balance? Because those lines are gone when we were
Yeah.
in a physical environment, and then we would just snap out of it when we were out of it,
Correct.
but it's no longer the case. How did these things happen at your organization, and how do you think we can prevent this?
It is true. Like people are working a lot more. The entire kind of demarcation that you said, right? That after office, people will not call you unless it's urgent. That thing has gone away, and people are working a lot harder. But what I think is one factor driving it is also the fact that we are currently in a crisis situation, right? So companies are in a supercharged up mode, which once this crisis or panic situation ends, kind of calm down a little bit. So that would organically only reduce this thing. But as an organization, what we have been trying to do is just sensitizing people about it, sensitizing managers about it. You just can't call someone at 10 p.m. and say that I need to get this thing done right. Or you need to be sensitive about everyone's responsibilities. And this is where I put on my diversity hat. Like in India, we often see that women take up a disproportionate share of household chores, right? So you need to be very sensitive about it. People have kids, like it's both male and female. They have kids who are not being able to go to school. There is no childcare facilities. They need to spend time. That kind of sensitization, active sensitization of managers is essential, and that is something that we are working at also at our organization, right? It's EQ, basic EQ things that we need, all of us need to work on. It is stressful situations for everybody. Like nobody wants to call up anyone at 10 p.m. and get work done. But that kind of a balance is necessary. And I am just hopeful that once the crisis calms down, things will, start to normalize a little bit. But at the same time, this intervention through sensitization of people is also something that all of us need to work on.
So now, Anuradha, tell me about the way forward for this role. Now that
Mm,
you are a chief of staff, you work so closely with the executive team. A lot of people that I have already interviewed, they tell me the next position in line for them is the CEO. So is that true? Do you have such aspirations? Does that also create any vibes with your seniors? And what if you can shed some light on the career progression of how do I, if I'm the chief
mm,
of staff, what's next for me?
yeah. See, chief of staff role is actually a launch pad for the next step. Okay. By the fact that you interact with so many leaders, you sit in so many meetings, it's like a crash course to leadership. So it is a launch pad. And the worst thing that a chief of staff could do is basically get comfortable in the current role and not think about what's next. That's a very common mistake that people make. Uh, but whether it'll be a CEO or something else, again depends on the individual. Depends on what kind of a role that individual did, because not all chief of staffs are same, right? You have different types of staff as well. So So, but definitely, I believe that after this, everybody aspires and everybody should aspire for a leadership role, because that's what you're being trained for. That's what an organization is also investing in you for. So yeah, but it's not necessary as a CEO. Choose what you want to do. You can become a CFO. You can become a CMO. It depends, but yeah,
Interesting.
leadership position
So
is the next
every
step.
leadership position is open for you after being a chief of staff. That's amazing,
Yeah, it depends on what you align to, right?
right?
If I'm like we discussed previously, if I take up and if the marketing person becomes chief of staff, the marketing person can have first.
Right.
Your
Uh,
expertise.
so, I think a great interview first. Thank you for sharing all the insights that you just did. And I would like to wrap it up by asking you, is there anything that I missed that I should have asked and I didn't?
You didn't ask me what's the most fun thing in a chief of staff
Oh,
role.
what is the most fun thing?
The most fun thing to be for me is the sheer variety of things that you will do. There is absolutely no limit. It is only limited by your own imagination. That variety, someone like me who gets bored very easily, that variety is just such a fun time. So that is the most fun thing that a chief of staff role does.
Awesome, Anuradha. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. I am super excited, that the world will be able to hear your thoughts around what this role entails, how fun it is, and how much they can learn through their seniors, and grow as an individual if they are in this role.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved the conversation, and I'm actually looking forward to your other series as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anuradha.